Hello my dears, my name is Mariana and welcome to my channel. It's a little hot in New York today, I'm sweating a little bit, but you know, we're here. Today I just want to share with you my 5 favorite tarot decks that are really deep, really mystical, really spiritual, and just bring you into the wonderful mystical revelations that the tarot has to offer. And I also just want to note that I love the traditional Rider-Waite formula. I know that there's different schools of tarot. Some people are far more into Marseille. Some people really like the Thoth tarot. I just find Rider-Waite to be the most straightforward, and it just speaks the most to me. So I'm using decks that go off of that traditional system. I have a little combination of some traditional decks and maybe some decks you haven't heard of, some new interesting decks that I have just absolutely loved and I want to share with you. And yeah, let's just get into it. So right now, my favorite deck, and the deck that I use absolutely all the time, is the Ethereal Visions Tarot. Now this tarot deck has like that Art Nouveau style. It's really pretty. It's not really interested in doing anything very wild or very innovative. It sticks to the traditional formula, but it is just so gorgeous. There's really soft lines, soft tones, and I think that there's something about this deck that draws me into that soulful experience, that ability to really drop down into a softness within myself that helps me bring out the unconscious stuff that's really longing to come out. Something else I really like about the Ethereal Visions Tarot is that it takes the traditional images of the major arcana and just sort of makes it a little bit more beautiful, a little bit more potent. I really like how these majors kind of show up almost more in this mythological way, like the pictures that we have in our heads from our stories. I use this deck all the time to read for clients. It's my go-to client reading deck, and I also use it for myself sometimes when I want to get a little bit deeper into what my soul is trying to say. My favorite, and a little bonus thing too, I think that the deck creator has created a more inclusive deck, something that is a little bit more modern, and that is really worth looking into. It's so gorgeous, but I've been using this one forever. It's just, we're bonded. So the next deck I want to share with you is actually the Jungian Tarot. And a lot of people probably don't even know that this deck exists. It's a very small publisher. You know, it's not something that you're going to see out on the market in all the tarot shops. You kind of have to go looking for it. But it's not that hard to find. And what I really like about this deck is that it was created with the intention of really bringing out the Jungian archetypes that are so illuminating for the tarot. So this deck uses the traditional formula for the minor arcana. So you'll see the certain number of wands or cups or whatever on the card rather than seeing a specific image for each of one of them. And yeah, that's not my favorite thing. I tend to rather have an image on the card, but that being said, there's a beautiful challenge in that too, because it allows me to trust my own knowledge and my own wisdom of the cards to be able to really tell my client what's going on, what the card is there to say for them. But the imagery of the major arcana is just out of this world cool. You know, the drawing design is good, it's really pretty, but I just find the choice of imagery on those cards to be deeply archetypal, to be really connected to this primal experience of the archetypes we meet in the collective unconscious. It steps a little bit out of the traditional Rider-Waite formula, but stays pretty true to it at the same time. So it's really good deck to experiment with, to challenge yourself with, and to get into some Jung. If you're new around here, I love Jung, so that's just something you need to know about me to make any sense out of any of my videos. All right, we're moving right along. So this next deck is one of the first decks I got. It was literally like maybe the third deck I ever bought. I'm not like an avid tarot collector, but I have my small collection, but this is the Wildwood Tarot. So this deck is really based in Celtic imagery and Celtic ideas. It does a fantastic job of bringing the Celtic mythology to life in the cards. There's so much green in these cards and really beautiful browns and blues. It's extremely earthy. What I really like about this is that the book that comes with the deck uses a lot of these archetypal ideas. It doesn't just, you know, associate different cards with different things from the Celtic tradition. It's actually trying to understand the Celtic tradition, the Celtic faith, in the archetypal sense, in the sense of magic and mysticism. So there are some differences in this deck compared to like the traditional Rider-Waite. For example, the Hermit is here as the hooded man and the Hierophant is here as the ancestor. But I really like these changes because, for example, the hooded man is a little bit more based in the image itself. You get that picture right away. You can see this, druid walking through the forest in that cloak and hood. And then with the ancestor, there is this call to consider the ancient, to consider the pathways that have been there for centuries. Rather than seeing the hierarchical structure, we're called to consider how we can connect to our ancient roots. And I just love that change. And whenever you get a tarot deck that changes things up a little bit, I think, just flow with it. See how those changes really resonate with you. Learn when it's really right to use that deck. I often find that different decks are right for different situations. So when I am using the Wildwood Tarot, I'm almost exclusively going to be using it for myself when I need a little bit of a quick dose of a reality check, honestly, a quick connection to my faith, my own ancestral roots. Another really nice thing about this deck is that there's actually a word at the bottom of each card. So here we have the 5 of Arrows, which is the 5 of Swords, and it's frustration. And I think that is such a good word for the 5 of Swords. It's pretty frustrating. And so it's a really easy deck to start reading with because it gives you a little bit of a portal into considering the card. And not all of the words on the cards maybe go with that Rider-Waite system, but I really do generally like what they've added and how they interpret the cards. Also, the court cards are really cool because rather than just having like an image of a king or a queen, page, knight, we actually have animals from the natural world who have had a really profound effect on our archetypal imagery, on our storytelling, and so those get associated with the different court cards. And I just think that's really cool and that's really interesting, and I think it's a really, really worthwhile deck to invest a little bit of money in. Not that much money, to be honest. Alrighty, so this next deck is maybe the least well-known deck. It's the most kind of indie, hidden gem sort of a deck that I found out there. And this is the Mystical Dream Tarot. Now, if you have Mystical Dream Tarot, if you've heard of it before, you know how wild and gorgeous it is. This deck is so intense. Its color palette is so specific, but it's also just perfect. It has all these purples and blues and red browns and greens, and it is kind of really trying to create this dream world for us. And the Mystical Dream Tarot is trying to give you a portal into your dreams. And we know that our dreams are the place where our unconscious can come to speak to us. It's the place where we get messages from the divine or from our own souls that we wouldn't necessarily get in our conscious lives. And that's what's really so cool about this deck, is that the imagery allows itself to get a little wild, it gets a little dreamy. Just like our dreams give us the wackiest images, this deck tries to replicate that, but also being really artistic, really beautiful, really grounded. It seems like a very highly intuitive deck. Like there was an artist who sat down and really just intuited what these cards could look like in a dream world situation. They do take a lot of liberties with the names of the cards, the different major arcana. So for example, here we have the Chariot, and this card is actually called the Moon Chariot. And we have this really beautiful image of the moon being pushed across the sky, as we know in the Greek mythology of Selene, who's one of the moon goddesses who pushes the moon across the sky every night. I really like this version of the moon because we have the moon itself as the image, but then we also have the waves, right? Because we can't have the moon without having the unconscious waters beneath it. And there's a house being like tossed around on the waves, and I literally had this dream like a few weeks ago, and I pulled the card and I was like, yeah, it's weird. It's kind of weird how this deck manages to reflect back your own dream images in the perfect way. It kind of, has to move away from maybe the traditional meanings of the cards to do that sometimes, but it just gave me such good food for thought to reflect on, seeing that image reflected back at me. This Nine of Cups is just like dudes hovering around an atom. Like, so random, but so cool, and exactly the kind of thing you would see in a dream. I really am into this deck. It's very weird, but very cool. So if you're a big dreamer, or you really like to use your dreams in your magic, as I do, I really, really think that this deck is worth checking out. It's really easy to shuffle. It's a pretty you know, like a good cardstock and everything. I just really like it, and I have a feeling you will too. All right, last but not least. This might be a little boring, but the Rider-Waite. So I really believe that any new tarotist needs the Rider-Waite deck. If you want to do Thoth, if you want to do Marseille, all of that's really good, but I really think that you need the Rider-Waite, because the Rider-Waite is so foundational to how we come at the cards, and it's honestly, in my opinion, the easiest system to read with. So if you don't already have the traditional one because you want to get like an updated version or something a little bit cooler, I recommend just getting it too, because it'll make such a difference in your reading practice, especially if you're a beginner, to get used to these cards and just connect to them archetypally, connect to them in this really profound visual level. So if I'm reading for a new client, honestly, I'll almost always use the Rider-Waite first with somebody new, because these other decks tend to have their own flavor, right? They tend to have their own spin on things, and the Rider-Waite always like directs me exactly to who my client is. It's really quite magical. I've never had a reading with the Rider-Waite where I haven't walked away feeling like I totally get my client. It is just such a beautiful introduction to who they are, what they're looking for, where they're stuck on their journey. So if you're a beginner and you're just trying to get your feet wet in understanding the depth of the tarot, the mystery of the tarot, and the wisdom of the tarot, it's the Rider-Waite. Get that one. It's such a good one. All right, well, that was kind of it. I just wanted to give you a quick little glimpse into the decks that I use, the things that I love, why I love them, and give you some inspiration for some stuff to check out. Of course, shop small when you can. Buy these decks from your local witch shop if you're able to do that. It makes such a difference in the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and make sure to follow me on Instagram for my daily witchery and wisdom. And if you haven't checked me out on Patreon, go do that too, because I have lots of goodies to give away. So thank you for being here. Go read yourself some cards and have a beautiful, meaningful day.